Okay, this is lesson 4.3 for course 2. So title your notebooks, Solving Addition and Subtraction Equations. All right, so you don't have to write anything down yet. Just make sure your notebook is titled. And here's a little background information. It says, why do I need to learn this? If you can solve equations, you can use known information to find unknown information. So you can think of an equation as a balance scale. Here is the balance scale. Here's what it looks like. When you do something to one side of an equation, you must do the same thing to the other side to keep it balanced. So think of it as a scale with two sides, and whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other. I kind of relate it to like a brother and a sister. If I buy one of my children an iPod Touch, and I don't buy it for the other one, that's not fair. So I always have to do whatever I do to one, I do to both. So remember that. That's a very important rule. Okay, so properties of equality. So copy these down in your notes. Push pause, copy them down. Okay, so the addition property of equality, it's just when you add something to one side, you have to add it to the other side. Same type of thing. And then the subtraction property of equality is whenever you subtract one thing from one side, you have to subtract it from the other side. Okay, so here are some examples. So let's do this first one together. X plus 7 equals 41. So what I do is I like to cut my equation into two sides, and that is by the equal sign. So I draw a line down the equal sign. That cuts it into two sides. I have this side and I have this side, two sides. Whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other side. So when I look at this equation, I see that it says x plus 7 equals 41. So I'm going to do the opposite of the plus 7, and I'm going to do minus 7. Now, if I have a scale, think of this as money, and you have something plus $7, and you take $7 off of that scale, I have to take $7 off of the other side of the scale to still make it equal. And then it will tell me how much that other one is worth. So I want to get my variable alone. I'm not going to minus 41 because then my whole other side of my scale would be blank. If I minus 41 from both sides, this side would be completely empty. And that is not what you want. You want to have stuff on both sides. So I keep my x by itself. I have plus 7 and minus 7. So then I'm left with just x. And then I do 41 minus 7. And I get 34. So now I know exactly what x is. So try this next one. Negative 6 plus x equals 20. So I'm going to draw the line down the equal sign. And then this is a negative 6, so I am going to add 6 to both sides. So remember here, this was a plus 7, and I minus 7. You do the opposite. This is minus 6, so I'm going to plus 6 to both sides. That leaves me with just my letter left, my x, on this side because negative 6 plus 6 cancel out. And then I have to do 20 plus 6, which is 26. Okay, the last one is 31 minus something equals 12. So what I'm going to do, so 31 minus x equals 12. I'm going to draw my line down my equal sign, and this is a 31. I'm going to do the opposite of 31. That's a positive 31, so I'm going to do the opposite of 31 and minus 31 from both sides. Now, here's where this one gets a little bit tricky. What I'm left with is a negative x equals, and then 12 minus 31. So if you want to do that, you would do 31 minus 12. This becomes 11. This becomes 2. 11 minus 2 is 9, and then 2 minus 1. So it's 19. But then I look at what my bigger sign is, so it would be negative 19. Now, here is a rule in math. You cannot have a negative sign in front of a variable. It's not allowed. So what I want to do is I want to get the variable to be just a regular x, just like I did right here up above and just like I did here. Both of those answers are just x and x. So I want this one to be just x. So what happens is you end up dividing by negative 1 on both sides, and negative 19 divided by negative 1 turns my answer into a positive 19. So by dividing by negative on both sides, I just had to really take this negative x and make it positive x, and then switch the sign here. This is negative 19 and make it positive 19. That's probably the trickiest part of solving equations. All right, so solve these four, push pause, solve these four, and then we will go over them. Okay, first I'm going to draw my line. I am going to look at my equation. 7 plus a equals 46. So I am going to minus 7 from both sides because that's a positive 7. They cancel each other out. I'm left with a. And then 46 minus 7 is 39. Now, if you want to, you can check every single one of your answers. All you have to do is plug it back in here. Is 7 plus 39, does that equal 46? Yes. So you don't have to do this for every single homework problem, but I really would suggest you to do it for your quizzes and your tests especially, because it's a really good way to find little errors that you might make. So here I draw my line and I look. I want my b by itself. So I'm going to get rid of this minus 10. And that negative sign goes with the 10, the minus 10. So that means I'm going to add 10 to both sides. Because that's minus 10, I want to do the opposite, and that leaves me with just b. And then negative 4 plus 10 is 6. So try it. Is 6 minus 10, does that equal negative 4? Yep. So I know my answer is correct. Okay, so this one, I'm going to draw my line. I want to get c by itself, and so this is a 9 right here. So I'm going to minus 9 from both sides, and then I'm left with c equals negative 19. So let's check that. So put it in for c. Is 9 plus negative 19, does that equal negative 10? Well, 9 plus negative 19 is negative 10. Yes, so that works. And then lastly, I want to get rid of this 104. So I'm going to do minus 104 to both sides. And I'm left with negative d. Here's my negative again that I don't want to have. So that's a negative d. So 104 minus 75, this becomes a 14, this becomes 10. So 14 minus 5 is 9. And then this becomes a 9 is 29, and then I don't bring down the 1 because I borrowed from that. So I have 29 as my answer. So it's negative 29. Negative and negative, I can change both of their signs by making this a positive d and a positive 29. I changed the negative to a positive, and then I changed this negative to a positive. So d equals 29. If you ever get confused, just check it. Is 104 minus 29, does that equal 75? Yes. So check your work. All right, that is it for that part. Now we have one more thing. You cannot have an answer with a negative variable. So remember that. Really remember that in your, when you're doing your practice problems. So for this one, just like the problem that we just did, change this to a positive and then change this sign and that would become a positive. So if I change this sign to a positive, this one has to change to a negative. It's the whole dividing by a negative, and it changes the sign of the other number. So if I did this and I divided by -1, D would equal 29 because a negative divided by a negative is a positive. If I did this and divide by -1, X is -43 because a positive divided by a negative is a negative. All right, that is it for your note.